Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it will be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story. Entitled parent accuses me of abusing welfare programs, assaults me and takes a trip to the hospital. This happened around 3 years ago in Germany after I just turned 18. It happened again in a grocery store, the only public place I really frequently go to, so yeah. Also, after I got my driver's license, my parents gifted me a used Peugeot 207 SW, built around 2012 or 2013. Really nice and good first car. Don't judge me, my family is a bit well off, not rich, but none of us is entitled. This is also important for the story. Back then I just turned 18. I was 5'11" and weighted only around 139 pounds, which is not much for my height. Keep in mind that German grocery stores hardly have in-store security, if any at all. And now on to the story. It actually started in the parking lot where I just parked my car. Still somewhat feeling mighty good driving my own car around and getting that good portion of independence by it. While I'm getting my shopping cart, I hear some little brat whining about something and turn my head just to see the entitled mother and her young son. Think pre-primary school. They were stepping out of a nice and expensive looking BMW. She came up to me and asked me for my shopping cart, which I declined because I had to put a coin in it. From what I remember, she frowned, waved it off and muttered something, but I just locked my car and went shopping without thinking about any of this. In case some of you didn't know, shopping carts are locked and you need to put a coin into it to be able to use it. You only get the coin back if you lock the cart to where it belongs after you finished shopping. Now, all the while I'm shopping, you can hear the entitled brat complain about this and that in the store, even about the smallest nonsense things. But it all started to go south when I wanted to treat myself to some beer, a bottle of wine and cigarettes. The legal drinking age in Germany for beer and wine is 16. Legal age for the hard stuff is 18. Smoking also is 18. Now these sections are close to the cash register for obvious reasons, and spoiler, it was the last bottle of this kind of wine and the entitled mother didn't like it one bit that I took it. I put it in a cart and almost instantaneously heard the ahem followed by, "I wanted that bottle, young man," in an annoyed voice. It was the entitled mother. Now, I was a confrontational person even back then, but I was more polite in my way of not backing down, so I turned around and did the only reasonable thing. Said it was first come first serve, and that she could ask the cashier if they had more bottles in stock. For some reason, a completely reasonable response made the Karen freak out. And here comes the infamous and informal slogan of this subreddit. "I'm a single mother and I'm in a hurry. Give me that bottle. I deserve it more than you," she growled, followed by something along the lines of, "You're too young for such stuff anyway. Does your social worker know what you're doing with your money? Getting drunk on taxpayer money?" Now I was gobsmacked and irate at this woman. Who does she think she is? I was still trying to be polite in a hopeless effort to diffuse the situation. I'm in the process of graduating school and how would I be on social aid? I muttered, which just made her angrier for some reason. "Go do something with your life, you alcoholic. Only failures and people on welfare drive such low-level cars." She meant my car keys, which were half-heartedly hanging out of my jeans pockets. How delusional was this woman? Last time I checked, people on welfare are taking buses. She tried to reach for the bottle, tried to slap my hand, and even wanted to yank my shopping cart away. Which is when I pulled my shopping cart away and told her to leave me alone and to get away from me in a stern voice. But she did the opposite. And then it happened quite fast. From what I remember, she lunged forward and tried to take a wild swing at my face, which I blocked by basically smacking her hand away. A basic move you learn in many Far East martial arts styles. And yes, I have some years of training experience in JUDO. But I was never fully into it, and I had already stopped training for quite a while when this happened. Yet, you still don't forget the basic moves. Before someone could step in and before I could have even told her to stop, she already tried swinging at me again. Now, I grabbed her wrist with one hand, grabbed her sleeve with the other, and threw her over my back onto the ground using her momentum, which is a basic judo move. She, however, landed so badly on her bottom that she got hurt. An ambulance and police were called. At this point, the entitled parent somewhat curled herself in agony on the ground and screamed bloody murder while people started to come over. A cashier supposedly saw the whole thing and there were cameras, but this somewhat unnerved me. I never had contact with the police and didn't know what would happen now, although I technically did nothing wrong. Cue to the ambulance and the police and her supposed brother. Or she could have lied about the single-parent thing. He came to pick up the little brat. The police took statements, watched the CCTV and the whole shebang while I was kinda unnerved the whole time. The fact that this Karen still screamed bloody murder in pain, I was trying to threaten everyone with a lawsuit who came near her did not exactly help the situation. Until she got carried off in an ambulance because there was something with her hip. They obviously did not tell me the exact information, but the heart fall onto her bottom seems to have caused some kind of damage to her hip. In the end, the police told me that nothing would really come of her threats, and that I could press charges. And I definitely said yes. I got the employee discount at checkout as an apology for experiencing attempted assault. Next story. Creepy guy who's stalking me gets a not fun time. This has happened about 2 years ago, maybe even 3, so my memory is a little foggy. It took somebody to remind me of this happening for me to remember. Now that is out of the way, let's start with what I can remember. So let's start with our anime plot characters. We'll call myself 14-year-old female OP. Stalker will be 14-year-old male Jones. My friend will be 14-year-old female Raleigh cause it sounds cool. So this all started as I went into high school. I had known Jones before from junior high, but all I knew was he had some mental disorder that I did not know. But I guess it might slightly explain his behavior. Anyways, he was lonely from what I knew and he didn't have many friends, and when people talked about him, they often called him a spid and whatnot. I felt pity for him. I had a friend with autism who was treated like this, and I knew it wasn't right, but I still kept away from him, because all I was worried about in middle school was good grades. So fast forward a little and I'm now in high school. Things were only going to get rough. I had symptoms of ADD before, but doctors weren't concerned about it considering I was doing somewhat well. I did not expect everything to go how it did. Symptoms just got worse and I couldn't finish anything in school. I barely passed. My parents and I were angry at myself. I fell into probably the darkest time of my life that I can remember. I did not want to get up. I had nobody to talk to that would listen, and I'd almost attempt suicide every night. But something stopped me, and thank God I didn't. About a month into my year, Jones started taking a liking to me because he had tried with all the hot girls, and I was one of the ones on the bottom of his list since he was out of ideas. He went up to me in the halls one day, asked me out. I said no and he walked off. That should have been it, but I guess he kept trying. I started walking home and he would often ask me out there. I said no, and he walked off. It was weird, but I didn't think much of it. He was just trying to get a girlfriend because that was the thing everyone needed to be cool. Eventually, he just stops trying and finds more girls to harass, and life continues. Not long after that, somebody spread the rumor that I was with Jones. I got harassed for it a little, it was distressing, but I could deal with it, or so I told myself. Until this group of the most stereotypical high school jerks come up to me as I walk out of the lab. They slap my binder and say oops. Annoying but expected. So I continue. They start harassing me. It's usually just pinning me to my locker and calling me pathetic, spit lover, what kind of insult is that? Whatever you could think of. I felt helpless. Nobody was coming to help me or even talk to me. That was until I met Raleigh. She had seen what was happening and just decided to talk to me a little. We grew fond of each other a little, but back to Jones getting worse. Jones had begun following me. He promised he would protect me from those jerkwads. Even though he just stood aside whenever something happened. I told him to go away nicely, but he persisted. I could see him watching me often and I generally felt unsafe. Even if somebody wanted to help, what could they do? Raleigh was risking everything, even talking to me. And the jerks had started to do whatever when they spotted me walking home or such. One time they threw a rock and hit me in the head. I was bleeding and in agony the rest of my walk home. It was pretty far from the school, 8 kilometers at least, and I felt horrible. But it only got worse. As it turns out, somebody I knew gave my Discord tags to Jones, because he had asked. So not only did I have him stalking me at school and down random streets, I had to block his countless accounts he made to stalk me. I'll spare you details of things he has said, mostly claiming he would do sexual acts to me. It was creepy. I didn't feel safe. Everyone was against me. Not even my own boyfriend, as he had started to abuse me at that time. I had nobody but Raleigh. But one thing crossed the line, if he didn't before. I was walking home telling him to get lost when he ran at me. He covers my eyes and touches me inappropriately. He screams and lets go, and I run off. What the hell was that? That went from a 10 to 100 very fast. I couldn't keep from crying and I was helpless. I was left just shocked. But it didn't surprise me knowing him and his stupid head. I was walking down the hall after going to the washroom back to my class and Jones was at a locker. And he walked towards me, so I walked faster. Unlucky for me, he catches up to me by running and he pushes me against the wall. And then he tries to get close to me again. Gross, I know. I am tired of this. And every bit of anger I decide to put on him. I guess somebody heard me screaming because a teacher came around the hall to find me choking Jones. He pulls me off of him and he sets up choking on air. So the admin calls me in with Jones and says, "You guys apologize and Jones stop doing that." I did not tell her about him stalking me out of embarrassment. I barely knew this admin. So she lets us go and life continues. However, Jones decides he hasn't had enough. So I'm walking home. We had just left school like 5 minutes ago. And I was with Raleigh because we decided that walking together would be nice and somewhat safer given the circumstances, as she too had been terrorized by that group of jerkwads earlier. We're walking down the sidewalk and I notice Jones ahead of me. He seems angry, maybe because he had to see an admin. He starts yelling at me and Raleigh looks at him confused. From what me and Raleigh remember, I took off my backpack with about 30 or so pounds of books and whatnot, and I swung it like a helicopter into the head of Jones. He's surprised, so he stumbles back a bit, and I have never seen myself so violent. I had left his mouth bleeding, he was missing 2 teeth, and I couldn't stop kicking him. So he had a lot of bruises and was left in quite bad shape after it. Apparently it was so bad that he had to go to the hospital to get a few things fixed. I have fractured his finger. He had some bad bruises on his head, ribs, chest and thighs. Missing 2 teeth and a lot of cuts in his mouth. So much so that he looked like the guy from Jaws after he got bit on the boat. I have never felt more power or grace ever since I watched him like that. I had a few complications after. It is hard to describe how much pain he would have been in. and the story doesn't do it justice. But to you creeps out there, do not mess with anyone. You might not be so lucky to get away with a few bruises. Next story. Shaming a passive-aggressive dude. I'm a 30-year-old female. My grandfather passed away a few days ago and I was attending the funeral. I drove myself back home but needed to make a few stops to get the basics for the week. So I stopped at a local grocery store at like 10 at night and started just doing basic shopping. As I stare at the 5 different varieties of apples, I look up as a cart goes behind me, bumping into me a little. Not enough to be seen as on purpose, just enough to get my attention. Standing before me is a man clearly in the early boomer category. I move to the side and mutter an "excuse me," thinking he would also like to stare at the ridiculous price of Honeycrisp apples. Nope, of course not. He looks at me for a bit too long before saying, "Nice dress. Bit early for Halloween though. You'd look better in color." Well, that's a new one. I've got chronic RPF, resting pish face. So I've gotten the "you should smile" comment a handful of times. I look him dead in the eyes with an exhausted expression that only someone who's been up since 4 a.m. to make a 4-hour drive for a funeral could have. I'll admit, I was too tired to even think that this was a clever retort. I was just being bluntly honest when I replied, I was just at a family member's funeral. And he was silent for a bit too long as if waiting for a punchline. He laughed awkwardly, and I continued to stare at him with a blank expression that Wednesday Addams would be proud of. Eventually he muttered an "oh no, sorry," and shuffled off like an ashamed bipedal slug. Not the greatest revenge in the world, but it definitely made my day a little better. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.